Not awkward at all. Good morning. How are we all doing? So many beautiful souls here today. I'm going to share something with you today that has helped me in my own development. I trust it'll help you in yours. And I find there's always a presupposition when we learn from a teacher and we learn from someone that we tend to place that person on a pedestal. And I want you to first get rid of that. I'm not on a pedestal. I am no better than you are. There's certain areas in your life that you're a master in, which I would like to learn. There's mistakes that I have. I'm as flawed as each and every one of you. But I've made some distinctions and I've gained some insights and I've been able to repeat these things over and over again, and I've been able to share them with other people who've repeated them over and over again, and they've gotten the same results. I'm not a mystic. I'm an occultist. And that may sound strange to some of you that have never heard the title, but it just means an occultist is someone who studies a secret science. And this is just a science that in the old terms we didn't have the language for that we do today. But today we have the language. And we can describe these things in a way that makes sense and is practical and isn't dreamy or superstitious. I want to start my story off with you today talking about one of my favorite teachers, the trees. We all love trees. We all love nature. We all have a sense of connection when we experience nature. Something that a lot of people may not know is the actual intelligence of trees. If you go out, and these are studies that have been done, if we look into very large forests, we'll find that these trees are more like a nervous system, like they're all connected and that they're all communicating. In fact, they're so intelligent, they're so connected, there's actual electrical communication signals that move through them. These seem a little bit slower than for us. In fact, a simple electrical signal in a tree takes about a minute to move an inch. It's a little bit, it's much slower than with us. But here's the interesting thing about trees. They communicate to each other through scent as well as through electrical signals through the roots. They're supported in this ecosystem through fungi. So little friendly mushrooms help transport these signals between trees. They're so self-aware that they can detect what bug is busy eating their leaves. In fact, they can pick up which different bug, and they can tell you all the different ones. They can taste the bug. They can taste it through the saliva in the bug, and through this actually releases chemicals in their own system that make the leaves bitter to defend them. Different types of effects for different types of bugs. They're so compassionate then that they release this chemical communication through to other trees so that other trees know what bugs are in the area and what risks and dangers there are, so they can start releasing this chemical to their leaves to defend themselves. Very intelligent. It's as if they've had the first internet and we think we're fancy because we're just getting fiber now. They've been ahead of the game for quite some time. But there's a very interesting thing that we noticed. Another little bit of data here. We take seedlings and we bring the sound levels very down and we look at about 20 hertz and lower. We can hear slight crackling sounds or slight communication sounds. And we measure the trees. The trees actually respond to the seeds as if there is actual compassion, an actual relationship between these things. They're alive. And we feel that aliveness when we're in nature, when we're in the depth of nature. An interesting caveat to this, though, is when these trees are in normal farmlands, in normal forests, this communication system seems to die. They don't communicate at the same level. The communication actually seems to stop. It's almost like they become isolated and dead. They're still growing, but the communication level is not nearly the same as it is in these rich forests, especially the older forests and the wider trees. In fact, in the older forests and the wider trees, you'll even find old big trees that have been cut down still getting sustenance, still getting life from the other trees. That's how beautiful the support system is. In the cities, it's kind of like every tree for themselves. And it's a lot like human beings, isn't it? We all go that way. Tony Robbins is a mentor that I have an incredible amount of respect for and was one of the first people in the NLP movement, neuro-linguistic programming. And there was a presentation by Tony that really hit my heart so intensely. It was at the time of the 9/11. And at the time of the 9/11, he was sitting in Master University, and he had people from both sides of the fence. He had people that were Muslims, people that were Jews, people that had family in the towers. One woman so intensely was there for the weekend because before she left for the weekend, she had a conversation with her partner. And her partner said, "Would you marry me?" And she says, "Baby, I love you. I just need to go figure out my life. When I come back from this weekend, I'm going to give you the answer." That man worked in the Twin Towers and gave her a phone call that morning and says, "I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to see you. The first plane just hit the bottom floor and we're going down. I love you." Imagine experiencing a phone call like that. But at the same time, while he had this, he had people there feeling righteous about this. But when you look through the audience, when you look through the different people there, he pointed out a very single fact, and this is such a useful thing. Some people went and said, "This is an outrage. How can this happen? Why should this happen?" Going into these anger fits and just causing all kinds of chaos. Other people in the situation went and said, "How can I help? How can I change? What can I do?" Other people just went in a helpless state. "Oh, it's hopeless. What's going to happen? The world's at an end. Everything's fighting. There's always war. You know, it's the Illuminati." Human beings reacted the way they always react. Stressors would find reasons to stress. Worriers would find reasons to worry. Helpers, healers would find reasons to help. The signal, the stimulus does not matter. It doesn't matter if it's your boss screaming at you or your child screaming because they hurt their leg. It doesn't matter if it's a person that loves you or a person that rejects you. The stimulus is not the factor. It's the interpretation to the stimulus that determines the state of being that we enter. George Lucas is pretty famous. We all love the Star Wars trilogies and all of these things, and a very successful genre and creation that was built. And when asked what was his secret to all of this, he said it's because there's two types of people. There's compassionate people and there's selfish people. Compassionate people tend to go further. They tend to sustain greater happiness because they're focused on the other individual. Selfish people don't, because they're in the moment. How do I meet this need? How do I meet this need? And, pardon my French, but do that other thing, screw the other people. This is the catch, the caveat through which he's built a franchise. A very effective franchise, many of us would agree. I want to go a step further. When we were looking at social behavior, and when I was in my younger days, I used to teach people how to be socially successful. People that were insecure, that had social anxiety, would come to me and come to my team, and we would go out into nightclubs or we'd go out in businesses and we'd teach them how to interact in a way that's comfortable with anybody. So if you had social anxiety or skills, you'd come work with us and we'd help you through that. And we found a very specific, interesting problem with people. The people that failed, the people that had the largest amount of social anxiety, were the ones obsessed about themselves. "Oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, I need this. Oh, I need that. Oh, I need this." The ones that were the most successful socially were the ones that focused on other people. How can I make these people feel great? How can I serve? How can I help? How can I heal? And these people had a more transcendent experience. They weren't caught up in that limitation, and they were more connected to the group. And as a result, they got better results from the group. Kind of reminds me of our trees. When they're out there, when they're working together, when they're collaborating, the communication the network has, what we so actively seek in our society in success business is the flow state. The state where we're just flowing, where everything's just magic and everything's just working, and it feels like when you're communicating, it's being received, versus this horrible, isolated state so many people find themselves in. Repeating the ritual, repeating the downward spiral, and this is truly a downward spiral because it actually is a chemical addiction. Any single time you or I experience any emotion, no matter what this emotion is, if it's anger, if it's rage, if it's loneliness, if it's helplessness, if it's stress, if it's success, if it's compassion, if it's love. If we experience this state on a regular basis, and it starts to meet any fundamental need that we have as human beings, in other words, it starts to make us feel significant. You're the one going through this. It starts to make us feel certain. Better the devil you know, right? It starts to make us feel a little bit of variety. Oh, I don't know what's going to happen. It makes us feel growth. We get distinctions from it. Either I'm growing in success or I'm growing in really dumb ways to look at how bad my life is. It's still growth. A contribution, two's a company. Misery loves company. But also success breeds. There's many tiers to how these fundamental needs are inside of us. But here's the catch. When it meets two or more of these needs, it becomes a chemical addiction. It has the same neurochemical pattern in the body as heroin does. We become slaves. We become slaves to emotional and biochemical states that run us. It then takes control of our subconscious mind and our images and our projections, and we start evoking it from people that we have conversation with. Someone can mean well to you, and you'll interpret it as drama or stress, or tell yourself they're pushing you too hard. But it'll be in the other area. And the same thing when you're in a good compassionate state. And you've been in good compassionate states where no matter what someone says, it just doesn't get you down. Your biochemistry runs you. The Egyptians knew this. They created the Sphinx. What did we have with the Sphinx? We had an animal body with the head of a man on top of it. Which means you have to be conscious about this single fact. You're a biochemical animal at one tier. One tier of you is a biochemical animal, and that's the thing you are here to evolve. You are here as an alchemist to change the biochemical patterns inside of your own nervous system. This is the lead. You are here to transform into gold. While the world is affecting you, while stimulus is occurring, and I don't care what that stimulus is, because there's people that have been in the worst possible situations and transformed it. You may have experienced this with yourself. There might have been people that other people always have drama with, but when you communicate with them, it's all good. I remember when I was young and I was in the nightclubs, I was working with a couple of people that were considered very dangerous and violent people. And everyone that interacted with these people always got physically abused, got frightened. When I interacted with these people, we were talking about family, and we got compassion, and we had drinks, and we had good times, and there was no violence, and there was no anger, and anything like that. I was able to extract this thing from these people because I didn't go into a state of, ooh, this is all bad, they're all evil, this is all wrong. I managed my state of being. Sadai El-Chai is a name of God, which means Lord of Hosts. The process of spiritual evolution, the process of ascension, is the ascension of our identity. The ascension of who you are, because all that biochemical stuff formulates the answer to the question, who am I? If you're very attached to your car and I come and scratch it, you feel like you're being scratched. Because you've identified biochemically with this sigil, with this symbol. And as such, you're in reaction to it. And I'm not saying don't love these things. I'm just saying be conscious of where it's positioning your identity, because here's the secret. Here's the mystery to the vault. Your identity is the key of the subconscious mind. It's known as the Christ itself, which is seen as Tiferet in Kabbalah, or the doorway of imagination, the doorway of the subconscious mind. It is the passage between both heaven and hell, the infinite kingdoms of the quantum field, and the current version of reality. You are the difference. But you is not a set thing. Another name of God, when Moses speaks to the burning bush, Ayir Shir Ayir, mostly translated as I am that I am, mistranslation. The accurate translation is I will be that which I will be. Another beautiful statement, Thoth, in the mysteries of Hermes Trismegistus, it says, I see, therefore I create. Quantum mechanics tells us that the observer has an effect on physical matter. So what is your fundamental perception of you? And the answer is not what you're telling me consciously. The answer is, what have you been feeling this past week? And now if we culminate the past couple of weeks, what was the emotional state that you found yourself in most commonly? Because this is your vibratory state. This is the realm that you have access to. We give up fighting with people. We give up fighting. When we do that, we realize we're not fighting with the person. We're fighting with our projection of the person. Our hallucination of who these people are and their power. The thing that shifted me from the nightclubs is and my dramas, when I kept thinking these people had all the power, and I shifted and said, no. They have the power that in my narrative I have given them. In my story I have told that they have. So what's your story, hypnotist? What is your story, soothsayer? What is your story, master? What is your story, God? What is the story that you speak to yourself when you look at me? When you look at yourself, when you look at the world? How do you describe these things to you? Because in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Language is the original magic. It's not just the language that we speak consciously, but the language we speak unconsciously. And here is the law. Here is the most important part of magic. Magic has one cool, essential, fundamental principle. And I don't care if you go into business psychology, social psychology, behavioral psychology, if you're trying to master dating, if you're trying to master business, if you're trying to master spirituality, it boils down to this. All things are at all times in communication and in relationship. Whether locally, in other words, consciously, or non-locally, in other words, unconsciously. And the result of this communication is called your life. And if you change this communication, you change your life. That's magic. As within, so about. As above, so below. The macrocosm repeats the microcosm. It's been said in every tradition over and over again. It's not them that changes, it's you that changes. But what exactly is changing? What's the purpose of the communication? Because this is slightly esoteric and I want to make it useful. I want to make it something you can take home. The communication is more than just the language of our mouth. It's the language of our heart. When we measure the electromagnetic output of fear, it's about 20 to 50 hertz. When we measure the electromagnetic output of love, it's 500 hertz. That's the difference between the trees that are isolated and the trees that are in the forest. When I say love, I'm not talking about some romantic love. I'm not talking about some reconditioned version of love that's sold to us by Hollywood or manipulated to us by social media. I'm talking about a sense of unity with the part of you that dwells within me, that dwells within the trees, that dwells within everything. The fundamental God self. Because what we see in this path, the difference between that to that, is that in this one, it says that the thing that I seek is outside of me, and when I do whatever, and I serve whoever, then I will find it, and then I'll be happy. And that's the one narrative, and it's also the narrative that leads to war, that leads to suffering, that leads to disease, that leads to loneliness. And then there's the other narrative, the other story. And it's the narrative and story that says, that which I seek is that which I am. Be the change that you want to see in the world. And I start to describe myself in terms of these things. And I start to describe my world and other people in it in terms of these things that I seek. I bring the kingdom of heaven to front. I become the narrative. And I refuse, flat out refuse to accept the past. Because I am not here to recreate. I am here to innovate. I am a creator and so are you. We are not here to recreate what was done. Yesterday is over. We are in the present now. And in the present means we create from this quantum moment. And as Birdie said, if you are strong enough to let it in, you are strong enough to let it go. And from letting it go, from becoming fluid, becoming water, you are able to now describe a new narrative. And the narrative comes in the language of your desires. your innermost, deepest desire. Because there's the difference. The difference is you stop believing what you've been sold and you start believing what your heart tells you. And that may mean you have to walk away from relationships that don't serve, that don't connect with you. It may mean you have to walk away from businesses that don't work with you. But it means you have to make a commitment to yourself, especially when it hurts. Because at first it hurts. It hurts when you let go of an old chemical pattern. You've seen a drug addict. You've seen someone stuck on heroin. You've seen the movies, or you've been there, or you've known it. That first 28 days, that first moon cycle is hell. Hell on earth. And it's easy to run back. It's easy to go make excuses. It's easy to say, this is good enough. I can accept this. And that's really fine if you're happy with a mediocre life. And if you're happy with the world not ever finding your gift and you not ever finding your gift, then that's fine, then that's okay. We love batteries. You know, the world loves batteries because you'll keep buying products that we put out, and you'll keep going to movies that we sell, and you'll keep buying products. And that's great. The world loves batteries. But the world needs gods. It needs innovators. And that doesn't mean you have the same message as Jesus or Buddha or Donald Trump. Good or bad gods. It means you have the unique story that you are here to tell, because each of us is different in our innermost desires and the things that's really important to us. And I'm asking you to believe in that, and I ask you to fall in love with that, because here's the marriage of alchemy, because it's a Tao. It's not a yin or yang. It's not one that's being selfish only, and one that is being selfless, compassionate. Both of these paths are actually imbalanced. A lot of people call this the left-hand and right-hand path in the magical world. The one is we serve the inner self. The other one is we serve everyone else. And they're both halves. Because the lie is still one of separate. If you believe one of those two things, you still believe that you're separate from all of us. The recognition, the key to it all, and the key to magic, the way I influence my life in a way where it's not manipulation, but it's art, and it's beautiful, is because I stop seeing myself as separate from you. I stop seeing myself as separate from nature. I stop seeing myself as separate from anything. And I recognize the simple truth, as the Oracle of Delphi said, know thyself. Because to know myself, I know that because I want love, you want love. Because I want joy, you want joy. Because I want happiness, you want happiness. Because I want wealth, you want wealth. Because I want a better world for my children to grow up in. You want a better world for your children to grow up in. Because I feel hurt, you feel hurt. And it doesn't mean I'm going to be right all the time. I'm going to mess up more than you do. The great thing we learn about people that are successful is they mess up faster. So I want you to be brave enough to go mess up. I want you to be crazy enough to make as many mistakes as possible and as quickly as you can. Because the faster you do, the quicker you're going to get to the truth of where your heart is and where you've been lying to yourself and following someone else's story. And systematically, there's going to be a magic. And the magic's going to happen when this moment occurs inside of your psychology. The difference between popular kids and non-popular kids are simply this one single distinction: boundaries. Non-popular kids are just as nice as popular kids, sometimes just as smart as popular kids. The difference is boundaries. They understand what they are willing to accept and what they're not willing to accept. It is the moment that you start truly valuing yourself and your mission and the things that are important that you will start raising your standard to the highest level. So I don't care what your standard is right now for your business. I don't care what the standard is right now for your relationships. I don't care what the standard is right now for your personal health and your spirituality. I'm asking you, I'm telling you, I'm encouraging you, I'm fighting with you to raise the bar. To raise the bar to a much, much higher level, because here's the facts. We express 2% of our DNA potential, and the difference between us and a silverback gorilla is 3% of that 2%. A bodybuilder sits in the gym and presses at his hardest. He's tapping 10% of the muscle only. We are not touching our potential. You're not even scraping it. You are capable of so much more. You are a god. I want to encourage you to live like one, to act like one. And a god doesn't come into the world seeking narratives. A god comes into the world as a magical druid that comes to tell a story And from that story gives birth to its reality. Do you have the courage to live the mission your heart has given you? Are you willing to give up the lie, the past, and believe in yourself? Are you willing to stop blaming the world and other people and to trust completely in your mission, especially when no one else does? When you don't see evidence of it already. When Jesus Christ said, I have gone before you and I've prepared the way, same as all the symbolism of most of the mystical traditions. In all of this, we have a narrative of the self. A narrative that says, I am not encased in this body, I'm encased in you and everyone else. And when I believe in that self, and I believe in its mystery, and I believe in the desires that it has, it shows up. But it can only happen when I am ready to change. I welcome you to your new narrative. And I give you 2017. And I say to you that you may have had some inspiration, some ideas, and some goals for this year. And I'm not going to tell you new year, new you crap. But I am going to tell you that for you to create a new world, old you has to die. Because old you is the evidence of its old chemical patterns and its old addictions and old behaviors, and the only definition of insanity is trying to find something new by doing the same thing. I want you to let it die. Because if you were strong enough to let it in, you are strong enough to let it go. And by letting it go, I want you to fall in love, because love is 500 times more powerful than fear. With the world that you want, with the life that you want, with your mystery, with your story. And I want you to believe in that more than you believe in the lie that your senses have told you, because your senses are subject to your addiction. And they will give you evidence of whatever you're addicted to. They won't give you truth. But you know truth, because you hear it in your heart, and you can't get away from it no matter how hard you try. Thank you for your time.